Hello, beautiful listeners. We have another epic, wonderful, gorgeous, inspiring guest with us today, as you know, because you've already listened to the intro. Beck, welcome to our potty app.
Thanks for having me, ladies.
It is so great to have you here. And honestly, your story is, we've got so many stories weaving through your experience in business, your personal life, you know, coming out to Australia with $500 and a laptop and building a business. There's just so many different cool conversations that we can have. So like, how do we narrow this down to a starting point?
And keep it at 20 minutes or 25 minutes.
Exactly. This might be 52 podcast episodes, you know? So we thought a really good starting point, because obviously the last few years have been tumultuous, have been up and down. There's been many, many stories of triumph and tribulation, and of course, disaster and trauma and all sorts of things. And your story in business around this is really, I find it incredibly fascinating and inspiring. And I'd love to pick your brain a little bit about it, because you, of course, had or have a production company. It was very successful. I was also very impressed you landed LinkedIn as your first client, but that's another conversation. Maybe we'll do a sales app and focus on that. But COVID hit.
Yeah.
COVID hit. It impacted your business in a pretty significant way. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Actually, I might just let you tell us that story and where you landed on that.
Yeah. So pre-COVID, February 2020 was the time that I'd sort of landed on, you know what, I'm kind of done doing what I'm doing and the way I'm doing it. That had sort of been percolating for me for, if I'm being really honest, probably about a year, maybe a little bit longer. I started my business in 2012, and I built my company to sponsor myself to stay in the country. So my background isn't in the technical video space, but I built a business in the video production industry. And when I got my citizenship, so you know, a few years later, let's say 6 or 7 years later, got my citizenship and went, you know what, I'm gonna need to change it. Like, the business has done what it needed to do. Let's do something different. And so instead of doing something completely different at that point, I went, I'll just put my name on it. So instead of having, you know, the old company name, I'll rebrand and put my name on it, and that will make everything seem fresh and different. And a year or so later, I'm like, this still doesn't feel right. Like, I'm not really enjoying this still. And I made a really hard decision to say to my team, look, guys, this isn't working for me anymore. You know, I have you all on salary. I am having sleepless nights over having to bring in the projects to pay you guys, because video projects for us were very much project by project, not retainer work. And it all got too much. And so through teary conversations, I sort of said, this is the situation. I'll still be pitching for the work and doing, you know, the conversations with clients, but I need you guys to be freelancers, not salaried staff. And that conversation happened, I'm going to say about a week outside of the COVID hitting.
Oh, wow.
And the pandemic locking us all down. And that was the situation where, as a business owner, you're like, oh, I've done the right thing by me before, but the team have been with me for a long, long time. And so there was a limbo there of documenting how many hours they were actually working on client projects, so that we had them as freelancers if we needed to go freelancers, but we hadn't actually terminated their employment, because if I'd terminated it whilst the whole thing was sorting out about job seeker, job keeper, all the random things that popped up, no one knew what that looked like. And I knew that if we ended their employment, they'd be eligible for nothing, right? Because they would have lost employment. So we had that delicate balancing act. And all I can say is my team were bloody amazing at being quite happily, I say that in inverted commas, in limbo. And so we sat in that limbo phase, and that's when my phone just started going off the hook. You know, everyone talks a lot in business about maintaining your positioning and being really focused on one thing. And 10 years of working in the video industry, and despite feeling really hard and wanting to close it all down, people knew my name and they had my number. And so we went from quite literally wanting to close the doors and having the conversation to go, I'm done here, to hitting 7 figures in the pandemic, and which is our biggest year ever, our biggest year to date, actually, because after the pandemic of 2 years of crazy, burnout hit, and then we, slow back right back down again to regroup. But yeah, the pandemic for us, the video industry as a whole, took a beating because a lot of people couldn't work and go on site. But for us, we had a film studio. So we were actually still doing lots of live streams and were considered an essential service because of that ability. And that's what saved us and kept us going.
Wow, what a story to tell. I can only imagine that the way you described that roller coaster at the beginning around that decision. I'm really curious to know, if you had come to that conclusion in your mind already, how did you push through? What was your motivation to go? Was it other people, or did you find something within you that kept your business going?
Other people. Because I could have very easily gone, oh, okay, I'm done. Like, close the door down. We were on month by month rent. So we were actually the only tenant in our co-working space, because our studio was part of a co-working space. We were the only tenant in the entire pandemic that didn't put our rent on hold, because we were still in there. So we could have finished our rent and walked away very easily. Other people, because I could see the pain a lot of people were going through, and we didn't do it for the money, at all. Like, when you say 7 figures as business owner, like, your profit margins can very wildly through that, so team and equipment and all that stuff. So it was a case of, we could help people. I could help guide you through setting up a home studio. I could ensure CEOs and doctors and the media could do their jobs and educate their teams and the public. And so our role became more than just what we could do personally. It became, well, we're kind of doing something for society here. Yeah.
And so that's even beyond the team. That's like, I think about even, geez, we're going down memory lane, because also, well, you had the choice of closing the doors and walking away. You had the choice, like, there were many options, and am I going to bring the P word? Sounds
pirouetted?
Like you had to pirouetted. You had to pirouette. This is memory lane. I remember the gin distilleries making hand sanitizer. There's the shift in that service offering that you have to make it really relevant. We also talked yesterday, we were chatting on your podcast, shameless plug here, the Champagne Lounge. Make sure you go check it out. And of course, we'll have linked show notes in the... What is that? What do we do? We put links in the show notes.
In the show notes.
Thank you. That's why there's 3 of us in this conversation, for it to make sense. We'll put links in the show note there, but also you talked about that burnout piece. And I think what's really interesting, a couple of things in there around finding purpose outside of self. It's about the team. It's about the community, society. And also, 7 figures can sound, great, and we talk a lot about profit is what matters. But then the retraction, I think of a conversation we had recently with Michelle Gregory about the recovery, or, going up the hill is really hard, but sometimes going down the hill is just as hard in a different way, which is an analogy here that's really relevant about, so what did that look like when you actually, I don't know what the word would be, maybe not downsized, but resized or got a better fit so that you weren't experiencing burnout and your team. And that's what we were talking about, what we talk about a lot is that whole burnout piece and avoiding that. So what's your insights around finding the right fit, I guess, and the right fit for now? Because the best fit for now in terms of your business size, what you're chasing, your purpose can change. And you've expanded, you've gone in all sorts of directions and growth angles. So any insights around that?
I think if I look at any of it, it's the following the gut piece that I feel that, if it's sitting there and it's really niggling away, like, to not sit on it for too long, and let it fester. And so I say that because we came out of COVID. One of my team then said, look, I kind of want to go and pursue my own thing. And I'm like, great, like, go to that. Another person said, look, I really want to just reduce my days. I'm like, awesome. That's cool too, which that then took the pressure off. Like, I had such a beautiful team because you could very easily have had the complete opposite of, you know, I'm going to stay employed and I'm going to take this, you know, however you want to take it. I had the nicest team who just saw how hard we all worked and were just super flexible in what they wanted to do. And so we came out of that all, and I kept pushing and pushing, because at the end of the day, that's what brought the money in. You know, that's the stuff that brings the money in. Or did, I should say. And I had the conversation with my team just a few weeks ago, to say again, like, I'm back where I was in 2020. Like, I'm back in 2023, feeling exactly as I was at the beginning of 2020, and I cannot keep it going. I just cannot. And the reason for that was now a mixture of, you know, I'm feeling the burnout and can't do things in the same way that I used to do things before. I don't want to do things in the same way that I was doing things before. And technology has meant that anyone can pick up a camera and make video and do the things, and know someone that can help them on the cheap. And so it got harder and harder to pitch for work. And I have a much bigger purpose now. Like, I don't want to be constantly striving for that. And so there was a few little tears on both sides. I was like, you're the best team ever. And they're like, you've been the best boss ever. Like, we couldn't have wanted a better one. And so I shouldn't have sat on that for so long. Like, I pushed it down and pushed it down, as in to say, we can make this work. Look how amazing COVID was. But the reality is, you've got to follow what you feel inside, I fully believe. And if that means pivoting and dancing and trying new things, great. Give it a go. Pirouetting.
Pirouetting.
Yes.
Well,
Because
it's really...
Like, go out.
So Nikki and I both just like...
This doesn't happen that often. I've got to say, all right, Ness, you go, and then I'll go after.
Thank you. What I'm really curious to understand more about, Beck, is, you know, Nikki and I had our own individual businesses, which were running really well, that we actually really enjoyed what we were doing. We just sort of came together and saw that we had a shared vision, a shared purpose that felt more, it just lit us up more than the work we were doing in the past. And so we naively went, oh yeah, well, you know, your business is a success, mine is, we just come together, we just mush that and we'll be fine. And in retrospect, it's actually starting afresh all over again, you know, a whole new business model, a whole new way of delivering, a whole different client base. And so we went through the pain of realizing that we're in a startup, and it was a very different feel about it. So knowing that Champagne Lounge, you launched that in 2023, and you know, this beautiful vision that you share with anyone who comes within your community about the purpose behind it. I'm really curious to know, you've come out of a business that clearly did well when so many businesses didn't. The drive, it sounded like you were striving and driving a lot, you know, it took a lot from you. How was that transition for you into a completely different business? And please do tell us a little bit about Champagne Lounge, but it is so far removed from the energy, I would imagine, that you had in the production company to now bringing into this, I guess, creating a community and a very different business model. So please do share a little bit about that, and particularly how that you've managed the emotion of that. Because I know in the early days of our business, heck, more than early days, there's been tears and there's been frustration.
Oh, there's not water in this cup. Like, yeah, so I started the Champagne Lounge in February 2023, and the Champagne Lounge has a very, very simple mission, really, and it's to ensure that business women don't feel lonely in business. And the premise of it was around building something and creating something that didn't have an agenda, that didn't teach you anything, didn't add to your to-do list, but gave women a platform to come together in a virtual networking space that could be about talking about anything. And so that's what the premise of it was. And because it wasn't teaching anything, I made the decision that I would charge $1 a day for people to be a member of it. And the $1 a day came from, I'm a firm believer that you need to really maximize every single day that you're here. And so 365 days in a year, I was going through a bit of a thing. I can see it on my vision board. There's so many 365s. You know, one of my goals this year was 52 podcasts in 52 weeks. I had a thing about like the weeks and the days of the year. And I'm like, you know what? I'll make it accessible and I'll make it affordable. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people think I'm crazy or was crazy or am crazy for doing that, because it's going to take scale and numbers of people to make that into a financially savvy move. And I remember saying to my husband, we just bought our country house, and following along from the country house, it was a dream of mine to have the Sydney house and the country house. Like, I don't know why, on the vision board, that's just what I wanted. And so we have it, right? We created that. We brought it to life. And I remember sitting in the pub one day going, I think I want to change what I'm doing. We've just got a second mortgage, babe. Like, what are you talking about?
I love it.
And so I remember that story. And I go, you know what? I'll do a traffic light system. I'm like, okay, we've got our finances here. You know, I will give the video business my best shot. And let's face it, that was February. We're now in October. I'm not quite sure when this episode will drop, but that's a 9-month period where I've given it a good hard crack in the video space and gone, it's not making me money. It's draining my energy. So I made the decision to close that, knowing full well that my income monthly is dramatically different. I was used to doing 6-figure months or close to 6-figure months to now doing sort of sub 10, same kind, like very, very different right now. But I know I need the change of pace to then bring it back up and go again. And you spoke about energy. Like, I have so much more energy in what I'm doing now in terms of speaking and coaching and building the Champagne Lounge, way more that now I've closed down what was energy sucking me. So whilst it was energy driving for that period during COVID, it then got to a point where it was sucking my energy and my time and my creativity. And so how do I balance the emotions of that? I wasn't joking. There's been a lot of wine. There's been a fair amount of tears involved, I think, in terms of what am I doing? But I say, what am I doing? But I have a really deep knowing that it's going to be fine. Like I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday on her podcast. She's a kinesiologist, and we were talking about the energy and the knowing in it. I'm like, I just have this feeling that it's fine. Like, it will be fine. It will be what it is. And I don't tend to sit in the negativities of, oh no, like $7 a week. Like, okay, like that's a lot of people to get involved, to like pay my salary, to pay my mortgage, to do all the things. I looked at it and go, this is the first time in 12 years of business that I've had recurring revenue. Go me. That's cool.
Yes.
Like, that's awesome. And so I look at it in slightly different ways. And then I have conversations with our members, and people send me little notes and emails to be like, that was the best conversation ever. I just needed that today. I'm like, I know what I'm doing. I know I'm doing the right thing. It's just going to take time. But like you guys, I forgot what startup phase actually felt like.
Yes. I mean, we're happy we're here, but also I imagine it's kind of like childbirth. They say that you kind of forget some of the pain of it, which is what makes you go, oh, it's okay, I'll have a second or a third child. I personally have not.
I'm glad you said that, because I would say the same thing, but I'm also child free. So
I've had 2, and it is exactly that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'd only have 1.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, this in itself, you know, a lot of our listeners, I'm sure will resonate with this piece around the business doesn't feel as exciting or inspiring or even just as good as it used to. And what I'm loving in this conversation is the self-reflection to go, what's actually driving this? Yes, it might be a sound business, you know, with the numbers, or maybe the industry's changed. Do I want to pivot or pirouette again in the same industry? Or is there, in your words, Beck, you said initially, it's a bigger purpose, and finding what that bigger purpose is. And as entrepreneurs, we know that people are going to think that we're crazy. We know that sometimes we get an idea, not just in our head, but in our heart, in our body, in our being. And if we don't see that through, I will regret it. I mean, I speak for us here, and I'm sure, you know, so, it's great to be reminded as well of that knowing and to come back to that. And the energy piece, I think that was really important. A theme that I'm seeing in our conversations and in life at the moment is this slow down to speed up. Also, I will say monthly
that's on a
recurring
post-it note on my desk right now. Yeah.
There you go. It is that slow down to speed up. And it's so, if we look at it pragmatically from a business point of view, it's such a good business model to have recurring revenue, but it is harder to build because you don't have that big chunk of project revenue. So again, a lot of our listeners and clients are service-based businesses. I think about, what is your revenue model? Is it a combination of both? And have realistic expectations. Well, you might not have realistic expectations actually, because we didn't and we've done it before, but be reminded that it's okay if you're slowing down to speed up and if you're kind of starting again.
Yeah, definitely.
So the other thing I would love to bring into this, because, you know, the COVID, the pandemic around the 20s, it wasn't just the business. It wasn't just the business that had a lot of change. You personally went on a journey as well, didn't you? Really stepping into your true, authentic self. And again, we would love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. So probably mid pandemic, I made the decision just to not wear wigs anymore. So I've had alopecia since I was 7, and alopecia is an autoimmune disorder, or condition, I should say. I don't know the word disorder. Condition where the hair follicles attack themselves. And so there's varying different degrees of it. But I have what they call alopecia universalis. So I don't have hair anywhere. I'm not the person to ask for tweezers or any of the like technical things.
Or hair ties.
Or hair ties or any of that. But I wore wigs from a very young age and had fun with them, but was wearing them a lot, all the time. And it went on a pretty big, I'm going to say 5-6 years worth of personal growth and development on self, not with the end goal of not wearing wigs in mind. I just caveat that with, I want to be a better person. How do I navigate my energy better? How do I, grow and have my personal growth in the journey and be able to do what I want to do in the world? And part of that process for me got to a point where I went, you know what? I was sat at a conference. I was sat at the Business Chicks conference in the Barossa Valley, surrounded by so many people that all had their own stuff that was just getting in the way. And I was sat next to the fabulous Shelley Horton, and we were talking. She was talking menopause. I was talking alopecia, and she goes, you know what? Just stuff it off. Like, go buy yourself some fancy earrings and just kind of make that your thing instead. And I was like, oh,
yes.
Wonder what happens if I did do that. And so the next day I went on a wine tour by myself. I'd booked a driver to drive me around the Barossa. And I went, you know what? I'm just going to have fun with it. So I bought earrings. I don't normally wear earrings, but I bought earrings. I did hair free and I went out wine tasting. Like, I dressed up and I felt like a bit like Sex in the City, getting in and out of the car.
Yes, it does sound very glamorous.
It was very glamorous. And that was the last time I wore a wig, because I got back and I did go, how do I do this in front of clients? Like, how do I do this? Because historically I'd kept track of what color hair I was wearing when I met people at meetings.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And so, like, to the level of, just really make sure you're not like putting anyone in a weird situation. I don't know what I was thinking, but kept track of that. So I got to a point where I just went, okay, let's stuff it. And during the middle of COVID, where masks were mandatory, we're using more screens, so I was wearing my glasses more. It was Australian summertime. I'm like, something's got to go here, and it's got to be the hair, because the other two are kind of legally required.
Yes.
And so, I booked a photo shoot with a photographer. Again, another blessing of the studio space, and changed everything overnight, just all over socials, all over everything, and went, okay, well, I'm ready now. Let's rip the Band-Aid off and go in. And I haven't looked back, actually. It's been great.
That sounds just amazing. And I think within that, there's the theme I'm getting through everything that you're talking about, Beck, is this sense of trusting your gut, trusting your instincts, and trusting yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And it takes time. Like, I think it takes time. If you'd asked me to do that, I mean, a friend of mine said to me 4 or 5 years ago, you do know when you decide just to take your hair off and do your own thing, your business will go crazy. Like, yeah, shut up. No, I'm not ready for that. Like, whatever. She was right.
Yeah.
It just so happened that coincided with my big, crazy 7-figure year and the next thing. And now I'm on stages sharing that story and talking about self-confidence and walking to your own beat and doing it your way. And I think I needed to go through that personal journey to get to the point where I can talk about it in a way that doesn't make people feel as though I just flicked a switch and everything was different, because it did take time.
Yeah. And I mean, I get this feeling of freedom, like freeing, even watching you talk about it and feeling it, you know, it is a really inspiring story to hear, because you're right. We all have that thing or things that we feel that we have to hide behind, and we can't show up as our true, authentic self. And I know that we hear those words all the time, but actually as we are, and to feel that we have to kind of put a mask on, whether that's a mask or a wig or whatever that is, to be able to, I guess, have the courage to take that off. And then, so any tips, I suppose, from, you know, actually having the courage to take it off, but then also, and I'm asking a question and I'm talking, so we're just going to go with it. So hold that thought, because then I feel like the reward came through, is what I'm saying. The reward of being able to be yourself, the reward of being free. And there cannot be a coincidence of you stepping into your bigger purpose, of you, again, that impact on business, and not having to worry about those things. Like, what color hair did I have on? That must have just taken up so much space in your brain and mind and energy.
Yeah. Mental, isn't it?
Yes. So now I'll go back to the question, you know, any tips on that? Because, you know, courage, people wait for courage to show up, and courage does not show up until we take that first step. That's the reality. You've got to take the step.
You've got to take the step. I think one of the things that I fully believe you should have when you're doing any form of change, whatever it may be, stepping into your power, changing up, you know, putting boundaries in place, this will still be applicable for that, is you need people around you that get it, that have seen the journey for you, that you've got in your corner. And for me, that's the cheer squad mentality, right? It's the people that are going to have your back regardless of what happens. And so it could be your partner or your spouse, it could be girlfriends, it could be, you know, just one best friend, but you need someone that you're able to like confide in, who knows that you can do it and goes, well, I'm here. Like, what's the worst that could happen? We'll just put an extra wine in the fridge, like, you know. And so you've got to have those people there, because there'll be wobbly moments. There'll be massive wobbly moments along the way. I mean, if I look back at my sort of journey up to that point, I remember I just moved in with my now husband, and he did know that like I had alopecia and was wearing wigs before we met. Like I'd already made the decision and put like a photo of me on, we met on Tinder, on Tinder. So I knew,
success story.
Oh yeah, we are. And so I'd put that photo on there to be like, well, this is who I am. So you're either going to be accepting of it or you're not. And so that got rid of a lot of tire kickers. And so he knew that. And so the reason I share that is he came home from work one day and went, babe, it's 40 degrees outside. Like, why are you wearing a wig? You must be like you're wearing a hat. I'm like, yeah, but I always do. He's like, this is, no, just take it off. That's ridiculous. And because I'd gone through the process for my whole life of put my makeup on, put my hair on, I'm ready for the day. And so from that moment, that was the little flex of, okay, I won't wear hair at home. Oh, okay, I won't wear it when people are in the house, not just the two of us. So if friends come over. And then if I'm going to go, you know, exercise. So it was slowly, little bits that I was doing behind closed doors and in my own comfort zone with one or two people, that then when I went and did the big step out, that it was like, well, no one actually made any bad comments or had anything negative to say for me at all. So I'm thinking, why did it take so long? But actually I needed to do that journey. Like I wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise. So I can't imagine me stepping onto stage or changing all of my social media posts or, you know, putting myself out there in this way had I not taken those steps. But the reason I share all of that is you need a person or a set number of people that will have your back and be your cheer squad.
I love that. And in fact, that's a beautiful way to bring us to the question that we always ask at the end of our time. I feel like we could talk forever, but and I think the angle I want to ask this on is taking on board what you've just said in relation to accepting that a little seed could be planted around change, whether it's a change in your business, it's a change in your life, decisions you're making outside of work that feel big to you. And scary and, going to take a little bit of getting used to. I mean, Nikki and I started business together, but we spent 12 months talking about, what did we want to do? Were our values aligned? How would the partnership work? Like, we did a lot of foundational work before we sort of opened the doors, so to speak. So if somebody's sitting in this space of wanting to create change, and knowing that that's not necessarily going to happen overnight, what is an overnight action? Does that even make sense? That is going to help them get started on that particular road. What would be something our listeners could do in 24 hours that could just be the first step?
Tell your person. Tell the person. Share what that vision is, what that dream is, what that change looks like, and ask them for their help in holding you accountable or ensuring that you get there. It doesn't have to be, so we're not talking about a personal trainer that's like 5 a.m. go, but checking in on that thing. But find the person, because then I like to talk about it like a problem shared is a problem halved. Get someone on board to help you with it. And they don't necessarily need to tangibly or physically or skillfully help you with it, but just being able to talk it through with someone. I think find your person and tell the person that's what you're going to do.
Oh my God, I love that. That is so doable.
Yeah, I love that too, because of the simplicity. And I think if I reflect also on my journey, it's definitely, Jules has been a key person who is similar, it comes to mind where sometimes where I don't believe in myself, Jules will say, that's just ridiculous, Nikki. Of course you can do that, or whatever it might be. So what I also want to say is it might not be a partner. It could be a biz bestie. It could be a bestie, a sister. And there are so many incredible communities like the Champagne Lounge, where if you're thinking, I just don't have that person, well, we're here. We can be your people. We can be your person. Yeah, you got 100%. You got us in one person. So there you go. So you reach out to us and make sure you do check out the Champagne Lounge. We absolutely love what you are creating, everything you stand for, and are very grateful that we can be each other's person as well. So
it's been fab.
Yes. Any final thoughts or words of wisdom from anybody before we wrap up?
You know what? I think for me, I'm just going to leave it at that one. Ask your person. This has been a beautiful conversation for enabling me. So thank you for letting me share all elements of this story, because I thought we were just going to cover off one, and we've kind of done several. And you're right, you've highlighted the theme through all of it, which might help me craft something new or a newsletter next week. So there we go.
Amazing. It's amazing. There's always another word from Nikki. Yeah, but even in that itself, sharing, talking. Find your person. Okay, I'll shut up now. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
I hope this sparks something in you today that you will go away and be creative about. Have a beautiful day, listeners and viewers, and we'll see you next week.